Okay, thank you folks for coming back. Those of you who are coming back on time, if you close the door, please, thank you. So thank you for coming back. We have a wonderful start to the afternoon. The founder of Bento Box Entertainment, Joel Kuwahara. He is amazing. He has a rich history of animation. You've probably seen most of the shows that his studio has done. They partner with Fox a lot. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce Joel, and Sean Martinborough, who you've seen throughout the week, will be moderating a one-on-one with him. And so let's have them come out. And in the meantime, Scott, can you cue their sizzle so they can come and everyone take a look?
There you go. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, everybody, thanks for coming out. I'm Sean Martinborough. I am an artist and a writer. I do a lot of work for Marvel and DC Comics, and also work for Simon & Schuster, kids books. So I'm going to talk more about the 2D, old-fashioned publishing side of storytelling.
All right, I'm Joel Kuwahara. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to talk about animation across, like, at least, I want to share, there's a lot I want to share across my career, which spans like over 30 years. And in the audience, it looks like we have a combination of some artists, some professionals, some people that want to get into the business, students. So hopefully we can cover a lot. And just so you guys know, like Sean and I, we just met a couple days ago, and right out of the gate, like we're engaging in these conversations that have to do with our mutual industries. Like he's in the comic book industry, I'm in animation. So much like overlap and similarities, but yeah, we keep getting caught into these deep conversations. We were just in another conversation in the green room, and it's like, you guys got to be on a panel, and it's like, we want to keep talking about what we're talking about. But
yeah, and I think it's a really great, it's a great example of, number one, being able to talk with other people that might be in your industry, or they might be industry adjacent, and be able to sort of learn and just vibe and just share ideas. And that's really important across the board. So you all should get used to sort of doing that when you are at events like these, or even in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I just want to say, so Joel was very gracious enough to invite me to see his office. And would you consider that the studio?
Yeah.
Okay, the studio space where they produce Bob's Burgers and The Great North, the animated shows on Fox. And it was really cool just to sort of see the inner workings of how they put together these animated shows. And I know that there are a number of people here that want to get into the animation business, and almost everybody that I run into is like, hey, I want to put out my own thing, my own movie, or I want to start my own studio or my own company. And I think one of the fascinating things about Joel is that he's been working in this industry for what, like over 30-something years?
Yeah.
You know, but he didn't just come out the box forming his own production company. He actually worked at studios, and I just really think it's important for them to hear how important it is for them to sort of get that knowledge of working in the trenches for a company before they just jump to the head of the pack and start your own company.
Right. I hear that a lot too. You know, you meet with students and you ask them, you know, what do you want to do after you graduate? And some of them will say, I want to start my own company. But you have to understand, like, why do you want to start your own company? Is it because you just want to be the boss? For me, you know, I had already been working 20 plus years before even the idea of starting my own company came up. And I'm talking about, I started at the base level, ground level. People may have heard of like production assistants, being like the ground level. I was below the production assistant. I was the intern, and I was even, in some ways, I feel like I was even below the intern because I was free labor sponsored by the government, so nobody had to pay for me. So basically, people were like, they said like, they went to a production and said, hey, do you want this body? You don't even have to pay for them. That was my job. And that job meant I picked up mail. That meant I'm dating myself. You guys probably don't even have to deal with copy machines anymore, but I had to copy scripts. I had to throw out the trash, but it was my door, it was my foot in the door, and you have to turn it into something. But I was the best trash thrower awayer. I was the best at picking up lunches. I was the best at picking up coffee. And so when our show got canceled, like now it's like, hey, we need a PA. Who are you gonna call? Oh, call Joel because he's really great at the orders and he's really great at picking up whatever. But the point being, like, you gotta start somewhere, and then you gotta learn everything, even at the ground level. Because believe it or not, when you're taking a coffee order, you better get that right, because you get it wrong, it's that one producer that's gonna throw a fit, he's gonna get angry, they're not gonna wanna hire you, and it's just coffee, right? You just think, this is just coffee. I had a college degree, and I'm taking coffee orders, but I would create like my own system, how to get it right 100% of the time. And then, I got lucky. I got the producers I worked for, I became an assistant. I got to a point where I was a good production assistant, and so a producer was smart enough to be like, hey, I'm gonna grab you, and then I want you to be my assistant on TV shows. And this was right during the time, if I remember, it was even before, it was like, do you guys remember like Hanging with Mr. Cooper, stuff like that? So I was working on Hanging with Mr. Cooper, and then I was a PA on that, and then Living Single with Queen Latifah was coming out. And so they were just doing the pilot on that stuff, and so they asked me to be a part of that. And so the producers, and so I worked on Living Single for a while, but right during our first season, during a break, they were doing an animated pilot for Fox. And they asked me to work, like, can you help me with this animated pilot? And it was called A Cool Like That Christmas for Fox. It had like Whoopi Goldberg, and it had Boys to Men, and it had like this really amazing cast. And it was a one-off special, just like a 30-minute special. But it was, the animation was done by the same people and producers by The Simpsons. And it was that same work ethic that got me onto The Simpsons, because after I did that special, the producers were like, hey, we love how hard you work, come join us on The Simpsons. And The Simpsons was only on like season 2 or 3, and I didn't even know, like, is it gonna be canceled next season, The Simpsons? Like, who would have guessed it'd be going on like another 30 years? But I started at the ground level on The Simpsons, and then that is where I got my foundation on animation from The Simpsons. It was on that pilot that I did called A Cool Like That Christmas, but there was still so much I didn't know, but it was on The Simpsons that I actually got to see like how they work with the actors, the cast, the recording, the scripts, storyboarding. And if you guys aren't aware, like in a lot of TV and animation, there's always like the writing side, and then there's the animation side. And sometimes they don't even kind of, I'd say like on some shows, they sometimes are kind of separated too. You don't always get to get exposure to both sides. But I was lucky, and so I was in a position where I get to work with the writers and work on the production side, and I got a lot of my foundation on The Simpsons, and I was on The Simpsons for about 5 seasons. And then just kind of continuing on Sean's point about putting in your hard work, from there, I worked at Warner Brothers, I worked at Sony, I worked at various animation studios, and it wasn't until like 20 plus years later that I'd already been a producer, that I'd worked every position, PA, production coordinator, production supervisor, production manager. I was editing. I edited animatics. I set up animatic systems. I set up the very first digital animatic system. Like, I'm curious if anybody can debate me on this, if I'm not the first. But we did it on The Simpsons in 1993. We got The Simpsons off of paper into Premiere at the time, and that was the first version of Premiere in 1993. So I wrote a manual on that. And so you evolve and you learn different skills along the way. And some of these skills that I learned, these were my ideas. Like, it's not like anybody came to me and said, like, I just knew what the problem was. People knew what the problem was, which is, like, film is kind of like dying. We need to get into a different space, and that's when digital came into play. But it wasn't until the later part of my career, where I'd already been in the industry 20 plus years, that I felt like I was starting to peak, in the sense that I was considered a veteran producer. So then it's like, I got to compete against people 20 years younger than me, so they got to work hard. I got to work extra hard. Maybe I have the energy, maybe I don't. At that point, I was just like a hired gun. So I might not even like the show that I have to work on, but I have to do it for the paycheck. And I have to be honest, like, during that time when I was looking around what was on TV, I felt like the quality was suffering. Like, I'd watch animation on TV, and I knew I could do it better. I knew I had ideas that I wanted to put forth on how I can make the animation look better. But to work at a different studio, there's a lot of people that are on the top level, like these executives and presidents, that, hate to say it, sometimes they smack you down if you have a good idea, or they always want to be the smartest person in the room, so they don't always allow for input. So the thing that got me to found Bento Box was one of these executives in charge of these big animated shows, who is a friend of mine. She would say to me, why don't you start your own studio? Because if you start your own studio, I'll give you a show to make. And she said that, and I was like, start my own studio? That's pretty crazy. And so I let it go. And then another executive, probably like 6 months later, said the same thing. And then I had an agent tell me the same thing. And then at that point, it's like, you got to listen. If people are telling you to start your own studio, then they see something that maybe you don't even see in yourself, that you have that ability to do it. And then I'm an animation guy. I'm not a business guy. So that's when I brought in my partners. And we would talk about founding a company. We called it Studio X at the time. And then we would have coffee once a month, and we would talk about what our studio might be like. And then one day, I get that call from that executive saying, do you have your studio? Because I have a show for you. And I said, we got our studio, even though I lied. We didn't really have a studio. It was just all on a napkin. But I said, we got it. We're ready to go. And she's like, okay, then let's get rocking and rolling. And we immediately lit up the studio, and we got our first show. And it was called Neighbors from Hell. And lucky enough, Bob's Burgers was the second show on deck that we started working on, because Neighbors from Hell got canceled. That could have been the end of Bento Box, but luckily we had Bob's Burgers. So, you know, putting in your work, knowing why you want to start a studio, but also understanding what are you going to do with the studio, even if you start a studio. Like, I had already put in my time putting down infrastructure at other places and figuring out all these problems at other studios, that now it was my time. Now was my time to do it and put it to the test at Bento Box. And I'll tell you this, I'm getting a little bit deep for you guys for animation, but if you are interested in knowing, and I'll just say this, there are so many shows on TV now that are still being produced, I'd have to say, like, the same way from 20 years ago. When we started Bob's Burgers, we were a fully digital production, and at the time, nobody was willing to risk that and do that, but we did it because we we really wanted to change the system on how we make animation. So, you know, and we still do it differently to this day. The way we animate Bob's is different. You may not notice it, but that's a good thing, because we don't want it to like scream out that it's animated any differently. We just want it to be funny on the screen and that it looks good. But we have over 100 people that touch an episode of Bob's Burgers, and our system allows for us to stay consistent and all digital throughout the entire process. So just, I know I went a long way from like the beginning to Bob's Burgers, but hopefully
No,
that answers like a big part of the question.
Yeah, no, that was. It was a great origin story. I mean, I want to see that animated. But I think that the one great thing about what you laid out is that your time in the trenches and your time working within the industry built up credibility.
Yeah.
So that credibility led people to say, you should start your own studio. And I think that, you know, for me, so I'm a native New Yorker, and I grew up in the Bronx, and I went to Performing Arts High School, the Music and Arts School, which is the famed school for those of you that might be old enough to remember that. And I was a huge comic book fan. And now this is the 80s, so this is pre-internet. And this is when everything was just done on paper, and you know, I was a huge comic fan, so you would go to the comic store and buy the comics, and I would, you know, copy, and I would draw them out. And my mom and my dad saw that I had talent, so they put me in like a local painting course that I would paint maybe once or twice a week at this community center in the Bronx. And then when it came time for me to go to high school, my mom is a teacher, and so she wanted me to go to a specialized high school, not just a local public school in the Bronx. I tried out for music and art, and I got accepted as an art major. And I met one of my friends in my freshman year was like, hey man, you know, we both love comics, and I take a really cool cartooning class up in Harlem. And you should come with me. So I said, okay, cool. And it was held at this place called the Children's Art Carnival, which was a nonprofit center, and they would have black professionals come in and teach classes for free. So you could take a free cartooning class, a free drawing class, a free photography, video. And I went there, and that's where I met my two mentors that I always give credit to for really shaping my career for becoming a professional artist. And one was Gil Ashby, and Gil was the purist. He was like, you have to learn how to draw. You have to learn how to, you know, anatomy, perspective, and light and dark, and shading. And the other was Michael Davis. And Michael Davis is like, this is a business. It's a hustle. It's a hustle. You got to hustle. And that was so great because they don't teach you anything about hustling in business when you are in art school. You know, they teach you the fundamentals. And so the great thing was that Davis also was friends with so many people in the comics industry. So when I was in high school, I met some of the great comic book artists and creators and writers, such as like Walt and Louise Simonson, Bill Sienkiewicz, Dennis Cowan, just really big name people, and I met them in the flesh, and I'm a fan. And they were so gracious and so nice, and I would just sort of see, not only is this what I want to do, but these are people that were literally representing like what I could do. And at the time, you know, a lot of times people you wouldn't know what the ethnicity was of a person who was drawing or writing a comic unless their name was very ethnic. So for example, my name is Sean Martin, bro, so unless you met me, it's a very European sounding name, so a lot of times people are surprised, oh, you're black, okay, cool. But when you see people and they look like you, that also reinforces that's so important, because you're like, I can do this. And so I just would, you know, like talk with these people. They would give me such great advice and insight, and that led to me graduating. And I went to the School of Visual Arts, and I majored in illustration. And I was determined not to wait until I graduated college to look for a job, because that's when everybody else looks for a job. So in my junior year, at the time, like I said, this is pre-internet, so if you wanted to get into any industry as an artist, you had to put your work in a portfolio and either drop your portfolio off at a studio or an ad agency, or mail or fax your copies in to the offices.
Like the big portfolios?
Oh, those big black portfolios. Yeah. I'm sure no one knows what I'm talking about here, except for certain people. But okay, cool, old school. But yeah, you literally had to put your work in a portfolio case. And at the time, there was only one comic book convention in the country, and that was the New York Comic Con. And Marvel and DC would send their editors there to look for new talent. And so you would go to a con, wait online, and if they go through your portfolio page by page and say, okay, you need to fix this, you need to fix that. And if they thought you were ready, they would give you a card. And the editor gave me his card, and I was like, yes. And so that Monday, I waited till a certain time. I called up, I said hi, and the editor I met was a black guy named Marcus McLaurin. I said, hi, Mr. McLaurin, I met you at the New York Comic Con, and you gave me your card. He said, oh yeah, come on in, Look. And so I was like, wow, I got an invitation to go to Marvel Comics, because I'd never been to the Marvel Comics office before. So I put on a suit, go into Manhattan, show up, and everybody was casual like what I'm wearing now. Everyone just had t-shirt and jeans, but you can never be overdressed for a situation. It's better to be overdressed than underdressed. So I showed up, and everyone was casual, and then Marcus gave me my first professional work, and this is 1993, and so I was a junior in college, and that's when I started working professionally while I was still a student. And so I was learning as I was doing what actually Walt Simonson gave me this amazing piece of advice I never forgot. He said, get paid to practice. And so I was getting paid to practice while I was still a student, and by the time I graduated, I was already working. And not only was I working, I was seeing how other artists, how they worked. Like I said, when I met artists like Bill Sienkiewicz, who's an amazing illustrator. Bill, I went to a studio. It was funny because he was doing a project, and Bill uses a lot of photo reference, which I've come to do. And so he was like, hey, Sean, would you like to be in this new book that I'm doing? I'm like, sure, okay. And so I thought it was all cool, and he used me as a reference for one of the characters. And I went home, and I told my mom and my dad, I said, hey, God, Mom and Dad, I'm a model for Bill Sienkiewicz. And like, oh, how much is he paying you? And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it. So next time I saw Bill, I said, Bill, so how much are we getting you to pay me for this? He said, let me think about that. And then he replaced me with someone else for the next issue. But it was just a learning lesson. I learned how Bill would do his work, and that learning process just made me a better artist. And just along the way, I worked for Marvel, I worked for DC, I worked for different companies, and this kind of goes to what Joel was talking about, where you work in the trenches and you work with people, and comic books are made, it's a team effort. The way comic books are made, it's like an assembly line. You have your editor that assigns the story idea to a writer. The writer writes the script. Then the writer passes that script on to me, to a penciler. They pencil it out in pencil. And then some pencilers can't ink their own work, so they divide up the drawing between a penciler and an inker. So you go from the penciler to the inker. Then it goes to the letterer, who adds the word balloon so you can read the story. Then you have the colorist that digitally colors everything. Well, back in the day, it was pre-digital. But all along the line, you have all of these different people working together in a team. And that's another really great piece of learning that you can do when you work in the trenches, that you learn to work with people. And also, people will assess how much they want to work with you by how well you work with others. So it's a very important thing. And so that's how comic books are made. So when you pick up a comic book, chances are that there are at least 4 to 5 different people that have worked on that book, and they live around the world. Back in the day, before things went digital, what you would do is when the penciler would finish his work, he would put the original artwork into a FedEx box. They'd FedEx it back to Marvel. Then they would FedEx it to the inker. Then the inker would ink it, put it back in the FedEx box, FedEx it back to the company. Then I think they would fax it to the letterer, because the letterer actually lettered on the boards. And then, of course, when the internet happened and they realized, wait a minute, we can save shipping costs, everything went completely digital. So
Shipping and time.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh,
Don't have to wait 3 days or whatever
Yep.
to get it there.
I remember when I was drawing a book for DC Comics, I was drawing this series called The Creeper, and I was so fortunate to have the great Sal Buscema as my inker. And Sal is a veteran artist in his own right. But Sal I lived in Virginia, and Sal lived about 30 minutes away from me. And instead of me trying to make it to FedEx to get to him, I would just drop it off at his house so I kind of saved myself hours to just keep working.
Yeah.
And there are many times where I would be driving to FedEx to catch that last plane
We
pickup.
did too. Do we sound like old men? Because we're just talking about like back in the day. Back in our day, when we had to ship paper and we had pencils in our hands.
Man, there were many a day I would be flying to Dulles Airport, which is where the FedEx, drop-off was, to catch that last pickup.
And that wasn't that long. Look, when we did the Simpsons movie, we used to get it, because some of our animators are in Korea, we would put our, what we call character layouts, our drawings, and to avoid customs, because if it gets caught in customs, it might take another 2 to 3 to a week to get caught in customs. We would put these drawings in a suitcase, and then we'd give this suitcase to our production assistant, and then that production assistant, we'd give them a ticket to go to Korea, drop off the luggage that had all of our art in it, and then they get to spend a day in Korea, and then they would come back. If you guys want to see footage of that, I think I have that on my, I think I posted that on my Instagram if you guys are curious to see
That
it.
is so cool.
But
that
that
is-
was like 2006,
Yeah, early 2000s, yeah.
2006, and we were doing that, which is
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's just amazing. Like now, it's all digital. So like, I still draw by hand. There are a lot of my colleagues and friends will draw digitally on like a Wacom tablet, but I'm just old school. So I like working with a crow quill, a brush, technical pen, and so I still draw on boards. But all of my boards, I'll scan them into Photoshop, create a Photoshop file, and then upload that to the FTP of whatever company that I'm working for. The great thing about that is I get to have original artwork that if I ever want to sell it,
Absolutely.
I can sell it. But when you work digitally, you kind of remove that option from yourself. But again, just work, and my goal was to never sort of work for only one company. Because, it's happened to me, but I saw it before, was that you'll work with one company, you'll get really good and really tight with your editor. Something will happen, maybe your editor might leave, a new editor will come in, and then they want to bring in their own people. And then you get cut. And then I would always say you kind of lost your rabbi, which is like someone who could look out for you.
Yeah.
And that's happened. And that happened to me, when I was working on Batman for like 2 years. And I was the first black artist to regularly draw Batman on a series. And it was cool. It got to be a bit of a grind, but a new editor came in, and he was like, hey, Sean, I kind of want to make a change.
They want to bring in their people.
They want to
right?
bring in their people. And so then I was out. I had to look for work. And that really was a prime example to always diversify and always work for a bunch of different people.
But you are your business.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You instead of thinking like you have to be working at their studio, you are the business,
Yep.
you are the company, and now because of your talent, people are coming to you, and then that
Yep.
way you can also work with a bunch of people.
Yeah, and that's the credibility.
Yeah.
The more clients you have, when someone sort of checks you out, oh, okay, I don't know who Sean is, but I see who he's worked for.
Yeah.
And then that gives me credibility, and then that makes people say, okay, I'd like to work with that person.
And then also you get to pick and choose
Yes.
which projects you work on.
Yes, when you get to that point, then you can say, that's not working for me. Or if you could just negotiate like a ridiculous rate for yourself, and that's something else that like you have to sort of train yourself to get accustomed to doing is negotiating for money. Because
Yeah.
as artists and as creative types, we tend to devalue ourselves.
Right.
Because we're like, I don't really want to rock the boat because I want this job, but I don't want to jeopardize it before asking for too much money.
Right.
But I train myself to just haggle over everything.
But also know what your value, what you're
Yes.
worth, and be confident in
Yes.
what that is. And I think that's something for all of you artists that also are maybe starting to get into freelance. You have to get a sense, I hate to say, you can't just be an artist. You have to be savvy. You have to be a business person, because you are going to have to negotiate what your rate is. And if you just keep saying yes to everything, the first offer that they give you, they might be pitching you that lower rate just to see how you react, and if you even ask for more. But you have to start getting a sense of what you're worth. And if you're worth more than what they're offering, depending on what the market is at that time, you can kind of hold out. I mean, I've seen it. I've been on the other side where it's like, we really wanted this artist, they were too expensive. If they really want you, they can usually find the money.
Yeah.
They can find the money.
Exactly, and usually like the first offer is like the low offer anyway.
Yeah.
And
Because
that's
nobody's
just-
going to start high, so they're going to start low and see if you react.
Yeah, and something like I love reality shows, but one of my favorite reality shows is $1 Million Listing on Bravo, and they have $1 Million Listing New York and LA. It's all about real estate agents that sell high-end houses and apartments and stuff. But I love that show because I love watching them haggle.
Yeah.
Like they'll say, okay, we're selling a house for $3 million, and someone will say, can we do 2.1? That's kind of low. Can we do 2.7? And you just really get into the habit of just negotiating. So like, listen, I'm a native New Yorker, but when I go to New York and I go to a hot dog guy and the hot dog says $3, $3. Can we do 2? Just for practice. Can we do 2? And just to sort of get myself in that mode, can we do a little bit better than that? And because like I said, as artists, we are not trained to do that.
I know. They don't train you, they don't teach you that in school.
Not at all.
Like how to haggle, how to negotiate. Maybe they do. Do they? Have you guys? No? And you,
Good for you.
Yeah?
Good for you.
well, that's because that's Brooke, by the way. Brooke works a bento box, so there you go. There you go. And by the way, after, if she's our head of talent relations too, so, yeah.
So Brooke, everyone's going to come to you with a high offer. Like, listen, I want top dollar here. Top dollar. Oh, get out of here. Okay, yeah. Gil's amazing. Like I said, Gil's one of my mentors, and he's like the nicest guy, but he's an amazing artist. And I think that, it just going to like what I said, it's like, for me, I love working with different companies because I always say, like, I collect credits like trading cards. It's just like, okay, I can work for a new company. That'll look better on my resume. That'll add to my resume. And it's always great. And you always want to be someone who is not only dependable. First of all, you have to be skilled so that they want to hire you. But you also want to be on time and professional. And you want to be likable and be able to work with, you know, because a lot of times the
Absolutely.
bigger jobs, these jobs might take time. So they don't want to work with someone who's a jerky person. You
Nope.
know? Yeah,
No,
like,
they don't.
because a lot of times people say, well, how come he or she is getting this job? Like, they're okay. Their artwork is solid. Because usually editors and producers, they'd rather hire someone who's mediocrely or generally talented but nice to work with than an incredible genius that's a diva.
I've said that, and it's kind of hard to believe because, you know, we all have like high standards, but when it comes to chemistry with your teammates, sometimes we'll sacrifice, you know, like, because it's the energy of the team. And if somebody brings good energy, good vibe, that's value in itself. Their quality might be a little bit less than you want, but it's a good team member to have around. And sometimes you need that. And one thing, just bringing up like the team dynamic aspect of it, you know, because of COVID, because of so much remote working, so much work now is done from home. There are a lot of studios that are doing a little bit of a hybrid or a hotel model where you kind of check out a workstation within the studio. Like, people have asked me, like, do you prefer that? Is that good? Is that bad? You know, I think that it's somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't have a strong opinion on it. Like, for me, I have 2 young kids, so I don't mind working from home, and I do think I get more done. But for people just starting out in the industry, the thing that I think they miss out the most is that dynamic of working in a team and knowing when you have to, like, knowing the artists that have your back, that will help you, that the mentorship aspect of it, having somebody that's better than you sit next to you and you can like peek at their work and you can be inspired by their work and then they can help you get better. A lot of that, unfortunately, is getting lost when everybody is just working from home. So I encourage, if you have the opportunity to work in a studio, I would do it because there's something about it, you know, like that interaction. You know, somebody even coming up during a coffee break and saying, hey, did you see Blue Eyed Samurai? And you're like, no, what? Like, and you're like, you should watch it, it's pretty good. And then, you know, just even that stuff helps because then you know what the conversation is, like what the conversation is around animation, the industry, people, you know, things like that. And it's funny because Blue Eyed Samurai came up yesterday, we were talking about it because it's so, every frame is just like amazingly beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's funny you talk about the studio experience. I've always worked by myself.
Yeah.
I've always had my own studio in you know, my apartments or my houses or whatever. And so people always look at me weird because whenever I go to someone else's job and they work in an office, I'm like, oh, this is an office. This is really cool. You get to be with people. I'm like, what are you, crazy? Like, we wish we were you working at home, you know? But yeah, for me, like, I think when because I write and I draw, and when I write, I can work anywhere. So like if I'm traveling, I can write while I'm working. But if I have to draw like a finished piece of artwork, I have to be in my own studio. I could do layouts and storyboards like anywhere as well, like that's fun. But I have to be like in my own kind of cocoon, and that's the way I typically work. But you know, I'll pick up the phone and talk with artists all the time. Like, hey, have you seen Blue Eyed Samurai, or what's good, or what's, you know, you'll email, you'll text people, and it's really great to build some kind of a cipher or some kind of a crew or team of creative people that you can bounce ideas off of. You know, that's really important to sort of do. And I always, you know, like any artwork that's on my walls, it's usually never mine. I mean, unless it's in my studio, like, because what I do is I'll have like 2 bulletin boards where I'll put work, like after I draw a page, I'll put it up on the bulletin board so I can keep track of continuity and also spot mistakes, because a lot of times, like, I'll finish a page, I think that I nailed it, I'll put it on the wall, and as I'm drawing, I'll look up and I'm like, oh man, that elbow's wrong. And then I'll take it off and like kind of tweak it and fix it. But usually everything else is just other artists who inspire me, you know, and I'm constantly doing that, you know. But yeah, I think that so that's, it's a fun, just going back to the team thing and working with other people and being able to show that you can work with other people, because now that I'm writing, it's really fun. It's a fun experience because when I was working as an artist, I would get other people's scripts and I would visualize their story. And the writer would be like, oh my God, Sean, that's really cool. I like how you solved that problem. And now that I'm a writer, I get to see how an artist will visualize something that I've done. And I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. And then sometimes, you know, they might do something, or like if we're designing a character before we start drawing sequential pages, sometimes like, you know, I'll give a description, the artist will give something back. I'm like, all right, it's not quite what I was thinking about. But then you have to kind of say, okay, well, let me be open-minded. Let me kind of meet them halfway. Sometimes it's a negotiation. Sometimes you say, well, actually, you do need to change that because the script doesn't, it calls for something different. Right. But it's a really interesting give and take. And this one project that I'm working on now, the artist that I'm working with is Italian, and he's based in Italy. I think it's Florence, and he doesn't really speak that he doesn't speak that much English, but his English is better than my Italian. But he and I, like, whenever, like, I'll say, hey, could you kind of tweak this or whatever? It's a very interesting experience, but he's coming at things from such a different perspective, and that's what I love about working with other creative types. Yeah. You know, the perspective.
You made me think about one thing that you said, which is like the feedback. And I think something that is really important to understand, and something, again, it's another skill to develop when you're entering the art industry, is criticism and constructive criticism, and to be able to take it and to be able to understand what's behind it. We are all, at the end of the day, trying to make something great. Like, you're trying to make a great comic book, we're trying to make great comedy on the screen. And we can't get so attached to it and so close to it that we can't also take that criticism and be too stubborn and not change it, because at the end of the day, our job is to make the audience like laugh and enjoy it. And so we do it all the time, and every once in a while, like, I feel like our team is really good about that, but every once in a while you come across like an artist that is just like adamant, like say this character needs to have a blue shirt, not a red shirt, it needs to be blue, and the artist will give you every reason why it needs to be the color that they pick. But the reality is, like, sometimes you got to pick and choose your battles. Do you really want to fight it that badly where now you're starting to piss other people off? Because it's delaying our ability to move the show forward because of the color of the shirt. There are other areas that you can maybe have a little bit more of a debate, because we do this daily. This is not something that just happens once in a while. We do like design reviews almost every day, where we have to give notes on things. And if we had to have a debate on every design, the show would never get done. But at the same time, though, I'm not saying like you should just roll over and whatever the note is and just do it. You have to get a sense and gauge yourself. Because I will be honest, the creators of shows, they're not always the best visual people. Just being honest, like, they don't come from a lot of them don't come from an art background, and so they see things differently, and it does need to be explained to them. So, but you know, it's a juggling act, it's a balancing act. I'm just saying that criticism, constructive criticism, is part of the gig. It's part of what we do, and that you just have to be thinking about that and be able to not take it personal. Nobody's trying to say you're a bad artist or that you're terrible. It's just, what's going to make the scene pop? What's going to make it funnier? You know, maybe that expression that you drew just isn't funny enough. Maybe we need to raise that eyebrow a little bit more. It's like that kind of stuff that we do all the time. And we don't just do it with art. For those of you that are, like, say, editors, we give notes on editing. If you're a musician, we give notes on music. We give notes on every note sometimes. Every aspect. It's notes constantly, because we're constantly trying to make the show better and better and better. Literally, till the week that it's going to be up on the air, we're still doing notes. So
I totally can sympathize. For me, now that I think that when it comes to art, if I get a script, I kind of know what I'm doing in terms of storytelling. So I rarely ever get a note to change something. Number one, because I really respect what the writer wrote, so my job is not to change what they wrote, it's to augment and build on what they wrote. As a writer, it's fascinating because I am my own toughest critic. And for example, I have a Red Hood series out from DC Comics now, and it's a 6-part series. Oh, well, thank you, Red Hood in the house, Red Hood fan in the house. But before I give it a draft to the bat office, I'll go through 30 drafts internally before I give them that official draft. And then I might get minimal notes. But if you were to look at the stuff, what I do and how I sort of tear down and sort of go through my own work, and I'll constantly be revising the dialogue. Does that flow? Is that clear? Does that need to be said? And that's also something I feel like it's a great advantage to becoming at writing after I spent so much time working as an artist, because I think I know how a story flows. And I also know that in a comic book, a lot of times when people try to write comics that come from outside the industry, they tend to overwrite. And if you understand the dynamic of a comic book is that comic books are 75% visual. And so you don't have to write as much. A lot of times television writers or novelists that try to write comics will overwrite because they're not thinking about the artwork's gonna be doing most of the heavy lifting visually. Right. So you don't have to write as much. And so a lot of times, so me knowing that, and also you don't wanna overwrite because then there's no space for the art. Right. So if you ever see a comic book, it's just tons of text. It's there's no artwork there. You can't see it. And the last thing an artist wants to see is their artwork covered by a bunch of text. But for me, it's just the editing process is just really, really. I do my own edits, and then I still will get some notes from the bat office, but they're not major. Yeah. But seriously, you have to be able to take criticism because there are people that can be really harsh. Yeah. And they can be harsh because they're jerky. But a lot of times they're harsh because they just don't have the time. Because like Joel said.
They just have to be direct.
Yeah, because they're like, we've got to get this done. I don't have time to baby you. This needs to be changed. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, and just for example, for Bob's Burgers, we have to do notes from two main sources. We have our internal notes, and we do notes from Disney, because Disney owns Bob's Burgers. So we have executives from the Disney level that give us notes. And then it airs on Fox, and then we have Fox executives giving us notes as well. So there's different tiers of notes. We have I think we have 10 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
And so we can do a question and answer, and to incentivize, are you okay with that? We do a question
Q&A?
Sure,
yeah.
I brought some things that if anybody wants it, that it'll go to the people that ask questions. So
it's cash money.
So I have a bento box hat. If anybody wants a bento box hat, and if nobody raises their hand, they'll be like, "Oh, you guys don't like the hat." But hopefully, you guys have a question. Whoever, I don't know if they have to be mic'd. Maybe we could probably just hear you. How about this young lady over here, straight up?
Okay. Let me see. Well, the question was, how do I manage my time when I'm juggling so many projects? Well, here's the thing. And my editors will probably be like, yeah, well, I'm a professional procrastinator. So, a lot of times, if I'm farting around and I don't want to do work, I'll just start washing dishes and clean them up on the floor or whatever. But it's just, but at the end of the day, you have to respect the deadlines that you get because you want to keep getting work. So a lot of times, if I'm writing, I'll schedule time maybe in the morning to write for a bit, and then I'll take a break and draw. And then since I'm penciling and inking while the ink is drying, I might write some notes on something else. But usually I tend to say, okay, this will be a day where I'll do maybe half writing, half drawing, and I just try to manage it that way. But yeah, it's a juggle. Sometimes my girlfriend's like, I can't follow all the stuff you're doing. She's a civilian, so she works in public policy. So but she loves the whole kind of comic book geek culture, which is really, really cool. So she'll come into my studio and say, "Oh, let me see your new page," and she'll look at it, and I've shared scripts with her, and so she enjoys that, and she's like, "I don't see how the hell you can remember all this stuff." And I write things down on a yellow legal pad. I have a bulletin board of things and different projects, and I have it juggled in my head, so now I'm
How many projects at one time, on average, are you doing?
Right now, I have at least 4 projects that I'm working on. I have 2 that I'm writing, and 2 that I'm drawing, and actually a 3rd drawing project I have to get back to. And actually, I just got word that I'm going to be writing a Hellboy story, which is going to be really cool.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's
Nice.
yeah. Like it's like I'm a huge like the creator of the Hellboy, Mike Mignola. I'm a huge Mike Mignola fan, and like I've illustrated 2 stories for him. But I said, hey, would you be interested in me like writing something to work with that Italian artist? And the Italian artist is a huge fan, so they were like, yeah, you got 4 issues.
That's great.
yeah,
That's
so-
great. Okay, I got another hat.
Have the mic?
Oh, okay. Oh, you got a mic now. Great.
Yes. My question is, have you ever thought about doing a Bob's Burger movie?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the.
Bob's Burger movie?
Is there going to be another one?
Yes.
It's not off the table. I think it was so much work, and to make a movie, it takes a lot of like creative investment. That I know Lauren definitely is like thinking about it, but right now it's like focused back on because it took him away from the TV show for a little bit. So now he's heavily involved in the TV show and on the Great North and his other projects. But it's all I can say. It's not off the table. Yeah.
Ask Disney. All right, coming over here. I saw you.
I just wanted to say, I wanted to ask, thank you for being here. Thank you for your wise words. But I wanted to ask, how do you keep the work-life balance, or how do you stay motivated during your work process?
Is that for both of us, or?
Yes, for both.
Go ahead.
Well, see, there's this thing called like rent and mortgage and bills, food and stuff. So that's the motivation, is to kind of keep getting paid. But yeah, you just really want to be professional. And honestly, for me, like being creative, like I have so many ideas that I never really am at a loss. It's usually like trying to sort of filter down my ideas in terms of like what I want to do. So yeah, I just keep adding projects, and hopefully my head won't explode. But I'm usually just motivated just to create, because it's fun. I enjoy what I do.
And I'll just say, like, it sounds very, very cliche, but when you love what you do,
Yeah, don't work a day.
it doesn't even feel like you're working. And I hate to, it sounds so cliche, but I still enjoy what I do every day. I feel blessed. I feel very lucky. The day just passes. And then I have 2 young boys. I do make time for them, but because of COVID and because of working from home, I feel so, so lucky that I could just like take a break, play with them for a little bit, go back to work, and it's just, you kind of do what you need to do. There are days when I have to go to the office and spend all day at work, but I think, but you kind of figure it out, But I think truly, when you enjoy the people, you enjoy the work, it doesn't feel like work.
It's like a bonus. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, it's like, oh wait, I get paid for this too? Because like you get so focused in terms of creating, and then when you're able to sort of create something that you really are able to translate what's in your mind's eye to the paper or the screen, it's like, oh, and then, okay, I got a check for this too? Awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
So I got a melted Kuchi Kopi notebook for anybody that.
I'll
Yeah.
ask
They're
this
already
question. Yeah.
giving the mic. Okay.
Okay.
So my name's Justin Odom from Maryland. My question is, and you mentioned this before, you have to get a deadline, but you also have your perfectionist mindset. How do you manage to make the two sort of compromise when you get work that you're turning in and it's not perfect, but your deadline's today, so you just have to live with it?
Okay. Okay. On the one hand, you have to respect the deadline, right? So at some point, you have to stop. You have to stop. It'll never be perfect. There are times, though, where I will push it because I'm like, I'm not satisfied, and I'll say, I need a little bit more time. A lot of times, if you just are upfront with your editor or whoever's hired you, I need more time, and I will get this in, they'll work with you. But you can't be one of those people that just ghost people. Never ghost anybody that you're working for. Because number one, it's immature and it's really corny, but you should just be respectful and say, hey, I need more time and communicate, and a lot of times they'll work with you. So that's usually like my thing.
Yeah, and then for us, especially when you work in TV, at any one point, we're working on like 13, 14 episodes all at the same time, all at different stages, all have different deadlines. We know we can make the show better. We know where the mistakes are, but there's a point, you just got to kick it out the door. You have to move it on to the next stage. So then we try to fix it at the next stage. And I have to be honest, that's what I love about working in the TV industry, animation industry, is because it teaches you how to make quick decisions. It teaches you to be confident in your decision making because you got to make a quick decision. You got to trust your instincts. Is it good enough? We got to like pencils down, got to move it on to the next stage. And that's just the mentality. Because if we spent an extra day on every deadline that we had to do, I'm exaggerating, but if we did that, it would wreck the system. Like, so you have to keep your trains moving, like, on time. I've got Bob's Burgers Season 13 T-shirt. I'll let Rio's, you're picking. Oh, you got it already.
Hi,
Okay.
my name's Ariel. I'm from Tennessee. What was the learning curve like when you were transitioning to Toon Boom? And did it slow down production while you were learning
I'll tell
the
you,
software?
I totally get where you're coming from because I deal with this at every stage, and I've got Toon Boom here as well. The beginning, especially with its new technology, and I even go back before Toon Boom with the same company. So believe me, I've lived this. When it's new software and when it's a new way of doing something, you're pretty much going to get almost like 90% resistance, and you're going to hear every reason why you shouldn't use the software, from it's too difficult, it's too hard, it doesn't work, it breaks, everything. But if you know the software, if you believe in the software, you got to power through it. And then they see the rewards. I've had people tell me every reason not to use Storyboard Pro or not to use Harmony. And then once they've learned it, they become the evangelist spreading the word on how good the software is because they just didn't know it. Half of it is just fear and they're just scared. And like with any software that you want to get good at, you have to invest the time. You have to learn it. You got to keep using it. You got to learn the tricks. You got to ask your friends that are better than you in the software, like, hey, how'd you do that to get better? It's constantly a growing process. There's never a point where you should feel, I know everything about the software and I'm done. You can always get better and better and better. So in a roundabout way, I believe in the software. And so like with Storyboard Pro, I believe, and this was when it was just a beta version, I was the teacher. I learned it myself, and then I would teach the storyboard artists. That's how I know firsthand, because all the board artists would say, like, it doesn't work, I don't like it, I'd rather do it on pencil and paper. Now it's become, for the most part, like an industry standard in animation, in TV animation. It really is, and now they're making a lot of like inroads and features and live action, but you gotta believe in it, and if it works, the proof is in the software itself. Like, you can see that it works really well.
Amazing. And I just have to shout out, we've been shouting at our sponsors all week, and Toon Boom is here. And, and I gotta, first of all, thank you to Toon Boom for bringing Joel and Sean and sponsoring this panel. And how many students do we have in the room? Okay, how many students who know about Storyboard Pro and Harmony? How many students can afford a one-year license? Right. Okay, if you promise to stay in the room, we're gonna have a little drawing for a free one-year license of Harmony and a free one-year license of Storyboard Pro. But we are in military time. I need you guys to stay in your seats after we say goodbye to these folks, because I think between the two of you, you have about 70 years of experience.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I'm thinking 60, 70. The next panel has over 200 years of experience, and this is a fangirl moment for me. Some of the legends of animation are going to be on the stage, so I need you guys to stay in your seats and just welcome them.
But
in a
is it
few
only
minutes.
2 people?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It
we
is
got 'em
6
beat.
people. So, but can we have a nice, warm welcome and thank you for Joel Kayahara
Thank you.
and Sean Martinborough. Thank you for all the knowledge.
Wait, hold on, real quick. We got to do a selfie.
he has
We're
to
gonna do a
this,
selfie.
yeah.
So hold on,
Everybody stand up.
Yeah, everybody stand up and get over here. Make it look like we had a full house, even though we did. Okay.
Get up at the front, and then I need you to sit back down.
All right. Is everybody ready?
Do it.
On 3. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Yes. Okay, and in true Bob's Burgers fashion, I'm just going to be the annoying wife, mother, so please sit back down. I'm going to need you to sit back down. I'm going to need everybody to sit back down. If you want to chat with them afterwards, we can. But yeah, I need to make room for the next 200 years of animation. You guys good? We're good, thank you. Okay, thank you so, I so appreciate you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it. Always hang out. Please stay in the audience.
You just send me their email.
I will. Perfect, thank you, Bradley. Thank you. Okay, thank you for staying in your seats. Those of you who are in your seats are eligible for the drawing afterwards. Keith White and
Saari is a freelance filmmaker and writer-director of Self, Pixar's Spark short, which was the first hybrid stop-motion animation short in collaboration with Tippett Studio. She's a cultural consultant at Pixar on Soul and Elio. She takes a pivotal role in critically analyzing and addressing depictions of the Black community within these films, illuminating any blind spots surrounding stereotypes, misrepresentation by providing insightful perspectives and knowledge. Saari also provides feedback on character designs by suggesting adjustments on shape proportion, skin color, body type, ethnicity, clothing style, hair design, and other attributes that are visible to the audience. She also directed and produced 2 documentary films, one called Exploring Blackness, and a short documentary on Black identity from the perspective of Black employees at Pixar. You can see it on YouTube. And then also a short documentary about female Pixar employees reflecting on the complicated history of the 19th Amendment in an effort to stimulate discussion and voting during the 2020 election. Welcome, Saari. Next, his first big gig was a California Raisins commercial in which he animated pixie dust swirling around claymation figure of Michael Jackson. Another memorable project was a video for the Beastie Boys song Shod Rock, directed by the late MCA. Marlon West is an award-winning animator, head of VFX supervisor at Walt Disney Studios. His credits include The Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Tarzan, Fantasia, 2000, Atlantis, The Lost Empire, The Princess and the Frog, Winnie the Pooh, Frozen, Moana, Frozen 2, and Encanto, and several others. Frozen, of course, received Oscar for Best Animated Feature, and Moana nominated for the same award. Marlon recently completed VFX supervision on the Disney Plus miniseries Nigerian Story Iwaju, and won an Annie Award in Outstanding Achievement Animated Effects in an animated production for his work on Moana. Ladies and gentlemen, Marlon West. Next, we have the co-founder of Jambalaya Studios, a television producer, animator, and character designer and film director, Bruce Smith. He's an animator for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, as well as the Roger Rabbit shorts, supervising animator for Kerchak and Baboons and Baby Baboon in Tarzan, Pacha in The Emperor's New Groove, Dr. Facilier in The Princess and the Frog, Piglet, Conga, and Roo in Winnie the Pooh, and he animated on Home on the Range and Cats Don't Dance, character design for a Goofy movie, Wreck-It Ralph, and Frozen. He directed the animated film Bebe's Kids, co-director on the Warner Brother live-action animated film Space Jam, one of the directors of the short film Hair Love, which won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short, and the Annie Award, a creator of Disney's Proud Family, the Proud Family movie, and the Proud Family Louder and Prouder, winner of the 2021 Windsor McKay Annie Award. Let's welcome Bruce Smith, everybody. Oh, thank you. Well, we have to do it right here at AfroAnimation. Next, we have Carol Holliday, who is the founder of Crowded Metro Films, writer-director of Disney's Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas, one of the writers of Disney's Tarzan, storyboarding artist and supervisor for so many titles, including A Goofy Movie, Prince of Egypt, Legend of Tarzan, Home on the Range, Jessica's Big Little World, Spidey and His Amazing Friends, Elena of Avalar, and so much more, character designer and supervisor for John Henry, The Little Mermaid, Mighty Mouse, The New Adventures, Muppet Babies, My Little Pony, the OG one, folks, and so much more. And writer, director, producer, editor of the live-action short film Wit's Daughter, which won Best Narrative Short in the 2009 GI Film Festival. Please welcome Carol Holliday, everyone. Oh, Carol also received, the Lifetime Achievement Award at the inaugural Black in Animation Awards for dedicating 20-plus years of work in animation and for creating a legacy of dynamic storytelling, and the Pioneer Award, of course, at AfroAnimation Summit. And we're not done yet. Next, we have Ron Husband, who started at Disney in 1975, assisting for Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson on The Rescuers. Then assistant animator on Pete's Dragon, and became the first black artist to reach the rank of animator at Disney. Animating on the short film The Small One, The Black Cauldron, The Great Mouse Detective, Oliver and Company, Little Mermaid, The Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, Hercules, Treasure Planet, Looney Tunes Back in Action, and the Paula Abdul video, Opposites Attract. Supervising animator for Djali in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Elk in The Firebird Suite in Fantasia 2000, and Dr. Strange, Joshua Strangebearer Suite in Atlantis: The Lost Empire. In 1991, he was honored with the recipient of the Centurion Award after addressing the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Washington, D.C. He was a featured speaker at Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame, received the National Achievement in Art Scholastic Award, and the Lifetime Achievement Award by Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center, character artist for Disney Consumer Products. He's published a book called Quick Sketching with Ron Husband, and he teaches to so many. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Husband. And finally, and this one's a little bit longer, Mr. Floyd Norman, starting in 1957 with Sleeping Beauty, folks, was the first African-American artist to remain at Disney on a long-term basis. Worked on 101 Dalmatians, The Sword and the Stone, The Jungle Book, Robin Hood, Mulan, Dinosaur, Hunchback of Notre Dame. At Pixar was story artist on Toy Story 2 and Monsters, Inc., co-founded Vignette Films with business partner animation director Leo Sullivan, R.I.P. Leo. It's one of the first companies to produce films in the subject of Black history, made segments for Sesame Street in the original Hey, 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 It's Fat Albert television special. Hanna-Barbera, Ruby Spears, writer in the Mickey Mouse comic strip, published several books, columnist, subject of the 2016 documentary Floyd Norman: An Animated Life, was appointed to the Education and Outreach Committee of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. Norman was inducted into Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame, named a Disney Legend, won the Inkpot Award, the Fritz Freeling Award for Lifetime Achievement, the Special Achievement Award from African American Film Critics Association, an honorary doctorate of philosophy degree from Cogswell Polytech College, award from the National Cartoonist Society, recently inducted into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame, and finally, the recipient of the Winsor McKay Lifetime Achievement Annie Award, Floyd Norman, everyone. I told you this was an epic panel, folks. Thank you all for being here. We're going to get into some discussion. I do have 11 questions, but I have a feeling I'm going to get through about 3 or 4 of them. But we want to leave some time for Q&A as well. We have a hard out at 2:55. They will remind us at the back, and then we'll bring it out into the hallway. So my first question really goes to all of you, and maybe we can go down and answer. From your perspective, what has changed about the animation industry studio system when you first started till today? I know there's a big question, there's a lot going on, but maybe choose 1 or 2 things that you can focus on. And remember their topic, Black perspectives in animation.
What has changed? Okay. What has changed from a Black perspective? Let me do that, I guess. Well, I guess there's been, we have made ourselves easier to tell stories with. I say that because, like, you know, you guys probably remember stuff like Fat Albert. Even go back a little further, embarrassingly enough, something like Song of the South. So, and then there was lots of shorts that Warner Brothers did in between, Cold Black and the Seven Dwarves. You know, what was the, Tex Avery did a couple things with, I'm looking at Floyd because he's a little older than me.
Yeah,
you may
'cause I-
remember some of these things. But I would say, you know, we were kind of taboo subject matter back in the day. And so I guess the change with the influx of, I don't know, something like when I did Bebe's Kids, I guess, made it a bit safer in terms of, and made us more human characters, you know, so it kind of started to define the landscape of us as more dimensional characters, I guess, right? So then you've got now movies like Princess and the Frog, and even when you mention The Incredibles, where you have Frozone, a hero, Spider-Verse, more heroes. So now the landscape has changed because now there's more artists of color who actually can influence the storytelling and make us more dimensional characters. If that's the shortest answer I can give.
Okay. Anyone else like to add? Yes.
Yeah, I'll say something. I know, like, so I'm from Pixar in the Bay Area, so I feel like we're in our own little bubble. But I remembered when I first started, I came in as like a desk PA on Incredibles 2, and I remember how excited I was just to see Frozone back in action. I love that we kept bringing up Frozone because he's, again, my favorite superhero. But when I started at Pixar, there was like no employees, resource groups. I remembered I was like, I would joke with my other Black friend who's a story artist of like, oh, I could only count like this many Black people at Pixar. It was like the palm of my hand, just 5. So when I was there, I started like the employee resource groups, and I think that was kind of like the big thing at Pixar specifically that they needed, because there wasn't anything like that. And just like storytelling wise too, like I remembered when we were making Soul, like early times Soul, there started these articles coming out about how there's more Black stories, but they're all about, you know, Black human or characters turning to animals. And like, you know, I think that was also the same time when Spies of Disguise came out, Princess of the Frog, and then Soul. So I think there was like, yes, there's more Black stories, but then why are these Black stories are turning to animals and not staying as humans? And now that we're getting to the stage where I feel like, oh, we're finally seeing just, you know, Black characters like Spider-Verse, but there's still not enough. I feel like there's only like that one story. But again, like I think there is little changes here and there from that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think like diversity. I think we talked about.
Or put it closer to your mouth.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think the diversity. When I first started, there was actually the type of stories weren't expected from a black point of view. We think about the television programs that we were doing in the 70s, 50s. You know, we weren't represented, and so there's a lot of representation today, which wasn't happening right back then. So story-wise, our stories were not expected to be seen. So that's a big part of it, I think.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly that not only was the amount of black people doing animation has changed. I mean, just when I was like the age of a lot of folks in this sitting in these chairs, I probably knew like 2 black people who did animation when I was in Chicago, which is where I started my career. And I remember going to a lunch with Bruce and meeting Ron and Adrian and Floyd were there, and I was just like, and there was like 12 black people, and suddenly my group, like 1,000% more black people doing animation that I knew of at the time, and that was still a fraction. Now, and so all these people entering the industry are demanding to like tell their own stories, start their own companies. I can see people, that are here today with their own studios, that are telling their own stories, making their own, and hiring other black artists. So that has really changed. There's a lot more authorship. You know, I was here earlier today talking about Iwaju, and that's a series created by Nigerians and a Ugandan about Nigeria. Got Disney's name on it, but all we did is facilitate a story that they wanted to tell about Africa or Africans.
I think for me, what's changed is not really a lot. Because, and I say that because, you know, I've been in rooms where people have asked my opinion on things like John Henry or something that I was working on at DreamWorks, but people always asked my opinion because I was approachable. So I mean, yes, there may be more stories, which is great, but I'm just thankful that people have always been interested in hearing what I had to say because I was interested in them.
It was interesting about, I remember that room, actually, that John Henry room. And, because I was asked to be in it, you were there. I don't know if you were there, Floyd.
No, it was
No, I wasn't.
Marshall, were you there for that? Were you there for that?
No, it was Marshall Toomey.
I say that to say, I remember that room, and I remember we were called in there, you know, black artists in the studio. This is a strange story, but I'll tell it anyway. We were there to kind of sign off on the idea of doing the artwork that was on the wall, the John Henry artwork. They wanted to find out what we thought. So it was a group of artists in Florida who was watching on the video screen, and they wanted to know our opinion of the art on the wall. John Henry, it was the African-American story of John Henry. But one of the things that I noticed that kind of bugged me to this day was that we were all called in there to comment on a bunch of white artists who was translating the, you know, Middle American black experience on the screen, but we weren't involved in the project. That always bothered me, and I remember telling you that. I was like, why are we called in this to say what works and what doesn't work? How come you're not working on it? How come you're not working on it? How come I'm not working on it? Marlon, Ron, we should have been working on that project. So, and that was the attitude of the studio back then, because they, at that point, much rather have white leadership on a black film. And so that's changed, I think, like you just mentioned with, you know, with your project you just came off of. They now started to install black leadership in proper places. And so I would say that's the change that you see today that you didn't see back in the day. I mean, you got a chance to do your film, that a female, you guys got to recognize, a black female director is a unicorn in this business. Meet Miss Unicorn. So the truth of the matter, that's the difference. That approach, that sort of like really looking on the inside and really trying to make your projects more authentic, it really takes us, our voice involved to make that happen. So you can put a numerous amount of drawings on the wall, and I responded to just to give you the truth in that room. I'm gonna tell you, I looked at the stuff, they looked at us and said and asked what we thought, and everybody kind of gave their thoughts and opinions. And then the director asked me, Bruce, we hadn't heard from you, what do you think? And I looked on the wall and I said, you know what I see, guys? I see fear. I said, I don't think you know who these characters are. Like, you're not drawing from a place of experience. I said, are you guys visiting like spots down in Florida, stuff like that, to kind of inform you on who these black folks are? Oh, well, yeah. I was kind of fired up at that time. And they just had a bunch of photos of celebrities that we all know, right? But no, man, you down there in Miami, you down there in Florida, go down to Broward County. Go down there to Pensacola, talk to those black folks. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, and really understand the character so you can really apply that to the fabric of who these characters are. And that's something I put to task. Now, I never saw the film, so I don't know how it turned out. But that's the difference in terms of really trying to install blackness on your project. It's got to be from the inside out. You can't draw it from the outside and expect the inside to read in a way that actually experiences true blackness.
The show was actually pitched by a white guy, and they were in Florida. And so it was their story. And in that room, there were 3 different opinions. And one person said one thing, Bruce said one thing, and Marshall said one thing. And I said, I can't speak for every black person in the United States. And they said, you'll design him then. And so when I went into that room with a board full of images, because by this point I'd been at Disney for so long, my symbols for drawing were very Disneyfied. And so I did what any artist would do. I got a lot of reference from a lot of different magazines, and I put them up on the board. And Byron looked at them, one of the animators, the lead animator on John Henry, looked at them and turned to the other guy and said, we could have done that. And so it was a beautiful story, and it was a beautiful experience working on that, and I was really glad to have been asked. You know, when assigned to it, the director came to me and he said, I'm so glad we have a black artist on it. And I said, how about a good artist? You know, that's the point of this and this conversation, is that it should always be about who is the best person, not necessarily a color, but who is the best.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter, we live in a world where we can't ignore color, right? It's in front of us every day. So I would say yes to what you're saying, you know, good artists. But I mean, I'm a good artist. They didn't ask me to work on it. I'm not just, you're a great artist. Maybe I was just good at the time. Maybe that was the problem. But I think, for me, that was their opportunity to really lean into who was at the studio, to really jump in and make it work. And I think them asking that question, they said, we could do this, or when you displayed your art?
Basically they were saying, it didn't occur to us to do this.
That's wild, and this was 1990-something, right? That it didn't occur to them. Carol said it. So I'm saying that's wild to me, that if you're trying to do, I know if I was doing a project that featured Latin American folks, I wouldn't do it without having Latin folks installed in the right places to help inform who the character was. Like, that would just be my immediate reaction. Now, I'm about 5% Latin. I've understood through my, 23andMe or whatever that is, right? But I'm saying I would have, installed in the proper area to tell the right story. Art is art. Art can be beautiful, and beautiful art comes from all races. But I think when you're really trying to lean into telling the authentic story, why not? That's where opportunity comes from, right? I don't want to be Laurence Olivier trying to play Othello today. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm saying that's where the industry's changed. And I'm thinking when that John Henry was done, that was like in our lifetime. You know what I mean? So I feel like change should have been really installed early at that point. Yeah.
Floyd, I'd love to hear from you. 1957 till now, lots of changes.
Well, not so much the 50s. Right now I'm thinking about the 90s, and this is a real quick story about how things have changed. 1996, 97, I was walking down the hallway of Pixar Animation Studios, and I got stopped by an executive who said, "What are you doing here?" Hello, I work here. I work at Pixar. That's why I'm here. But imagine that happening at Pixar today. Stopping a young brother or sister and say, "What are you doing here?" Like, why is a black person at Pixar? You know, that's how much things have changed. So that's just a whack. I wasn't offended by it. I just found it really amusing that a Pixar executive would find it odd, strange, that
That's
a person
Pixar.
of color
That's
would
in the
be in their
90s.
studio.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing
I work here.
Yeah.
If you work here, why is my trash can still full?
Oh. I'm
that
sorry,
You
Mr.
brought it
Latin.
there. You brought it there.
Sorry,
It's like
Mr.
those
Lassiter.
micro-
Why is my coffee cup empty?
But it brings up a good question because we were talking behind the scenes here that, you know, any studio, you could fill in the blank. It felt like for a time it was like one black artist, and then if that artist left, it would be replaced by another one black artist. And I know that's not the case anymore, but you're all in some ways pioneers in this industry, a lot of firsts in this room. Was there a pivotal moment for you? And I know, Bruce, you had one, and you talked about it like being at Cal Arts and saying there's zero representation, then comes, you know, proud family. But was there pivotal moments for all of you where you're recognizing your place in Black history? And was this recognized at the time? And if not, can you talk about that experience for you?
Marlon and I, when Bebe's Kids was brought to the studio, we knew that that was a first at the time. We knew that, okay, this is a rare opportunity. And I remember Marlon and I scooting around LA doing our own research and stuff, and I was in my little drop top Suzuki Samurai, y'all don't know about that. And me and Marlon are scooting around South Central LA, taking all these pictures, taking all these photographs, doing the stuff that I was talking about, you know, that anybody could do. And we realized when we were riding along, it's like, wow, this is wild. This is wild that we're actually doing this as a feature film. You know, at the time it was a feature.
Yeah, it was a feature from the jump.
And so we knew right away we were doing something different and special, because also, you know, it's just me and Marlon, basically. And so now we had to translate the Black experience to a bunch of white artists, you know what I mean, from an animation standpoint. And these are artists who hadn't really done these characters before. And so there were trials, you know, of really trying to understand, you know, without being stereotypical, you know, how to animate these characters, the approach of these characters and stuff like that. So that was different, but at the same time, I knew that we were doing something that was different and kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I felt very special to try to do something, you know, like Bebe's Kids, and go around and actually, you know, we'd worked on a bunch of animated things, a lot of talking animals and fairy tales, but this was something that was set in what was then South Central, now it's South LA, and trying to be authentic to that and have people who actually lived in that community be able to recognize themselves. And I mean, that's one of the things that I've always tried to get right as a Disney artist, right up until Awaju, is that there's always, you try to make these things that are universal that people can enjoy all over the world, but you want people who know better, who live in New Orleans, or who live in Bora Bora, or who live in Lagos, Nigeria, or who live in South LA, to like look at these fanciful films about characters that burst into song and sing, or or talking animals or whatever it is that we're doing at any particular time, and be able to recognize it as being authentic. You know, that you've asked people, that people you've had people installed in the right positions to actually get things right, or you've talked to the right people and they've brought you into their homes. That you want to just try to do right by people who know better.
Yeah, I think also too, like, I don't think people understand the pressure of being that only black person to represent the film. And there's like a double-edged sword, because you're there because I want this to be right. I want this to be good for my people. But then you have to think about, like, you know, the black audience too, and how quickly, if things don't go right for that black film, how the black person, that one person, the billboard of that film is the one mostly attacked from their own community too. And I feel like a lot of that also has to do with just like there isn't enough of a range of black films to talk about the different types of black stories that are out there. Like, yeah, so it's kind of like, it's like a double-edged sword to be a black, and it, like the amount of like Ethiopians who watch the film being like, well, that wasn't my experience. I'm like, girl, like I can't do every experience, you know? Like I can't do every experience. But I think that's what the issue is right now, where it's just like there's always has to be that one artist to represent the whole film, you know, and then that person getting the most pressure out of, you know, the other filmmakers in that film, which are primarily white, who get no shade at all, praises. Oh my God, how brave of you to make a black film. Wow, how courageous of you, versus the black artist getting the shit if one little thing is done right.
Keep it real.
Yeah, for real.
Years ago, my mother made a comment about, I won't go into the whole story, but it was Aladdin, and she said, you know, just kind of under her breath, I didn't see anybody saying, I'm going to make me a story about a blue man, meaning nobody else made the film. Disney made a choice to make that film. And so every time I hear somebody complain about, like, what was that movie that came out, In the Heights, and the casting of In the Heights and how it was pretty fair. I was like, well, nobody else made that film. You know, that was the choice that Lin-Manuel Miranda made, and everybody gave him grief for it, and he like said, oh, I'm so sorry, but nobody else said, I'm gonna make a story about In the Heights. He made that story. And so I try not to allow the internet to determine my self-worth. You know, if I make a story, it's my story. You know, I make what's entertaining to me, and if somebody else wants to watch it, then yay, and if they don't, then okay. But it shouldn't, I don't feel grief from anybody who has grief against whatever choices that I make.
Ron, pretty historic for you to be the first animator to be African American, to rise to the title of animator. Did you feel that at the time? Did it feel like an accomplishment beyond, you know, considering this place in Black history, or was it just, I'm an animator? Okay.
No, I had no idea. When I went to Disney, I had no idea what an animator was, what an animator did. I got in on potential. They saw my sketchbooks. They thought I could perhaps work my way into animation. But I had zero animation experience. And what I learned was from day one. And the historic aspect of it, being the first black animator at Disney Studios, named that, I had no idea that was making that step. My training was as if we were getting ready to put on a play. It was acting, it was performance, and it was how can you learn these aspects? Balance, proportion, perspective, solid drawing. This is what you were judged on. And so, you know, when I was promoted to an animator, it wasn't that big a deal, literally. The word went out to the Watts Times, and ebony. It wasn't like, today animation like the 800-pound gorilla in the room, gaming, it's everywhere. Back in the 70s, you had Hanna-Barbera doing TV stuff, you had a couple of Filmation, you had Ralph Bakshi, a couple of little things that, and Disney, they make a picture like once every 4 years. So it wasn't like the big news. So the historical aspect of me being the first black animator at Disney, because you had to do 100 feet of animation to get a screen credit.
So,
So that was something that the animators were aiming for, but I fell short on Rescuers, and I fell short on Peace Dragon. So I struggled through 3 productions before I even got my 100 feet on like a small one. And I was sick at the time, so I couldn't really enjoy the ride, but it was just small potatoes because we were trying to just literally stay alive. Animation was just struggling at that particular point in time. We had a bunch of new people, new animators, because Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnson, Mel Carr, those guys worked on Snow White in 1937, 1974, 75. They were still at the board. And so there was a rush to try to get young guys to try to learn from the experiences these older guys had to pass on before they retired. And so it was a struggle just to maintain and to try to keep Disney animation afloat. And for me personally, I'm learning just line moves from paper to paper. That's like news to me. My eyes are getting bigger and bigger every day because I'm seeing, oh, this thing's moved. I was like on the job training and literally learning. So I wasn't really totally aware of the impact. Looking back today, I can see, but back then I had no idea what an animator did, what an animator does. It was just news. I just wanted to do something more than my previous job was I was doing block diagrams and flow charts.
So what's so funny about this story is that, so now right along the line of you telling us that, you're trying to discover being an animator, you were an animator at the time. So now rewind back to 1981. Summer of 81, I was at Cal Arts. Myself, 3 of my roommates, we go down to the Disney studio because there's this woman, Cece, this black woman who was running the archive section. What is it? Well, it's called, what is it called now? The ARL, Animation Research Library, used to have it on the lot. And it was called what was the name of it on the lot at the time? The Morgue. Interesting. So it was where they kept all the artwork of all the Disney films and stuff like that, right? So we were going down there to see Cece, who managed the Morgue, just to kind of get some inspiration, see a lot of its artwork, stuff like that. So back in the day, security was a little bit more lax. So myself, we all 4 black dudes, we parked right there on Riverside Drive, hopped the fence on Riverside Drive, the big old fence.
It was the bird.
Big old fence, yeah. And so now 3, 18, 19-year-old black kids are just walking the campus at the studio. And so we approach all the rooms where all the animators are. We look in a room, yeah, white guy here, walk, another white guy there, walk, a black dude. And that black dude was Ron Husband struggling to find out, I guess, if he could actually animate shots. And we're looking at him in amazement, watching him animate these shots, watching him struggle through these shots. His drawings were amazing, by the way. Don't believe all of this struggle stuff. This dude can draw. So, but that inspired us. We see you, and now we actually can be this person because you sit up there making the example for us. So something that we never forgot as we walked away in cuffs, from security and stuff like that. But it was something that completely inspired us. So I want to thank you for that moment.
To go along with that, Bruce, I was invited to the South African Film Festival a few years ago. And part of the invitation was that they said that you can't be what you can't see. And COVID hit, so it never happened, but that's a truism. Back up what you were saying.
Yeah, man, no, that was for real. The cuffs was tight, too. But true story, she was real, yeah. Thank you, my friend.
Aubrey, can I just go off script just for a second?
Please, please.
There was something that occurred to me as I was sitting here listening to these beautiful introductions. Just how many of the same films were in our different introductions. Some of the same studios in our introductions. The fellowship that you all are experiencing in this room today and this week, you're going to be crossing each other's paths from now on. So cherish each other, support each other, because these are the same folks that are going to be rolling with you for decades. I rode Bruce's coattails into this soul food restaurant back in 1991, and it was, first time I met Ron, first time I met a whole bunch of folks who are not even on this stage. I met Carol on Rover Dangerfield, try finding that on anywhere. But the only person I've met who I haven't known for like decades here is sitting to my right. So I just wanted to just take a moment, because this is all about some education and stuff too. We want to inspire young folks. But yeah, the look around this room, the folks you've been meeting all week are the folks who are going to be on your journey, your animation journey, for the rest of your lives.
Yeah, so don't be an asshole.
Yeah, if you could take one thing away, don't be an asshole.
People remember shit.
Yeah, they do. And in animation, you notice ain't no beef. So I'm up here with Floyd. I ain't got no beef with Floyd. Not beefing with Marlon.
Beef with Floyd.
Ron and I ain't got no beef. Carol and I, we all good. So I don't want to hear 20 years from now y'all beefing. There's all of a sudden this animation beef thing. Let's not do that. We all make movies together. We all root for each other's movies too. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I say that to say, this is a real thing. Because I think Good Times just came out, right? On Netflix. Oh. Hold on.
See,
Hold on. This is what I'm saying right here. This generation I'm going to talk to right now. Now, the trailer came out, kind of sparked some things with y'all. Y'all went online. Y'all started voicing your opinion based on a trailer. Trailers are meant to spark your interest one way or another. Trailers are supposed to excite you. Trailers are supposed to make you scratch your head and stuff like that. But trailers aren't meant for you to trash anything before you actually see it. Okay? And you can form your opinion around that. But I say that to say this. Even if I didn't like it, I wouldn't go on Twitter and trash it. Yeah. Mainly because it's a black product. And when you go out there and you trash a black product, you think we gonna get a chance to make something? You see what I'm saying? You think you gonna get a chance to make something? Because they're gonna remember if you have a project that's even similar to, in terms of just your character structure, or the place you wanna tell your story. Oh, that was a place they told that story on Good Times. We don't wanna do this. The character structure. Oh, that's a family. You guys got a black family like it was on Good Times. We don't wanna do this. I'm telling you, when you get to this space and you making stuff like we making, you're gonna meet those execs who are gonna remember when you went to Twitter as a kid, how much you trashed that thing, and it's gonna squash all of your dreams, right? So I would suggest, if you got beef with the stuff that you see on screen, talk to your friends about it, but don't take it to Twitter, because you only stomping on your own feet later on. I mean, there's a lot of films I didn't like in the archives of whatever filmmaker when I was growing up, but you won't see it on my Twitter, me blasting whomever or blasting a film. I joke about Song of the South. The artistry in Song of the South was amazing, but you never see me go on Twitter, blasting my boss's films, right? So I'm saying that to say that everything negative, you can keep to yourself sometimes. Throw the positive out there. Still give it flowers. Either because it just helps you down the line.
I was going to say, we had lunch a couple days ago, and you taught me this phrase I never heard of, was all skin folk are not kinfolk. And it kind of blew my mind, but also made me really depressed and sad.
I'm sorry.
It made me wonder, have you guys had that experience of other black people not supporting you, and how did you deal with that? Just like we were saying about the whole Twitter thing.
No, because I think we did our films before the advent of social media, so we didn't get that. We would all have conversations about stuff and choices in films and stuff like that, but amongst us people as artists, we kind of had a unified kind of vibe. Honestly, I didn't really have beefs with any, especially us folks of color in this business, because we were all striving towards the same place. That's the other side of it too. We never stopped on anybody's feet. You know, I never took a job from Ron. Ron never took a job from me. I didn't take a job from Floyd. You know what I'm saying? What's great about this industry, it is all talent based. So talent is talent forward in this business. You can't shuck and jive your way to an animator. You know, you can't, yeah, it's true, right? Because we've seen people do it and it's like they were gone after people figured them out. It's like, oh, this dude can't draw. Or this, it's true, man. It's like,
Like what Ryan was saying, you can get that 100 feet a week or you don't. I mean, you can only posture so much in this game.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, you got to really know your stuff. That's what's great about animation is that it's really talent forward. And so, like Sahadi's saying, just don't be an asshole. And I think you really find your space and your place in here because your talent will speak for you. Yeah. Like most artists, by nature, are really sort of introverted, right? We always drew like this and didn't want anybody to see it. And then as we got better, our arms went wider and people really got to, you know, explore our talents and we got to expand our talents that way. But I think the key to it is there's some really talented people in this business that some folks don't want to work with for whatever reason. Now, you don't know because we ain't going to Twitter and saying all of this nonsense because we all want our artists to strive and survive because they may hire you one day and you want to be able to prove your talents all the way around. So that would be the advice of the day, I think.
And that would be something that I would add to it. I mean, you asked, you know, when did you see yourself as a black person in the industry? The question I just butchered, but it wasn't until 2020 when a lot of kids started reaching out to me on Instagram and either asking me to mentor them, which I didn't have time to do, or asking my opinion on black things. And I'm like, I'm just an artist. And seeing so many people complain that they couldn't get in because they won't hire me because I'm black or whatever, and I'm like, they'd send me their stuff, and I'm like, they're not hiring you because you're not good. I didn't say that. You know, I tried to be as encouraging as I could, but, you know, the thing is, you know, like Bruce said, you have to be excellent. You know, this is a business. I know we love drawing. But this is a business, and people are going to hire A, people that are the best, and B, people that they get along with. So, you know, both those two things that have been said, that you have to like be up on your A game in terms of your art is super important. And the other thing is that you have to be likable. You have to get along with the people that you work with. You have to lift other people's ideas. I've been in places where people have called me stupid and had nothing to do with my color. They just didn't like me. You know, but I went off and did my own thing, and I still keep working. So you have to, basically, I'm just trying to sum up, you know, basically what Bruce said is just like, be really good, and don't just think just because, I mean, I got so frustrated at one point because there were so many jobs after 2020 where they were just like, they were only going to ask me because I was black. And I applied to one job and I wrote on the cover letter, I'm black. That was all I wrote. Of course I didn't get hired. But you know, the point was I was just so frustrated that they were only looking at me for my color. It's like, hire me because I'm amazing. But there are like 6,000 people in the animation industry, I just found this out, in the union, that I just found out. You know, and if like for me as a storyboard artist, if 20% of them are storyboard artists, that's 1,200 people that I am competing against for jobs. How many people did you have as storyboard artists on Proud Family?
At any given point, I mean, I don't know, maybe 15.
15. So
Get on that mic.
that's like one person trying to get a job out of 1,200 for 15 jobs. So you have to be the best at what you do.
One other thing at that point, because we all strive to be great at what we do, obviously, right? And the other side of it too, getting a job in this business, we're not expecting everybody to be great off the bat, you know, especially coming out of school, but you will learn greatness when you get with great people and stuff like that. So that's another piece of this, but here's another thing I want to, because there's a lot of people, they probably hit you up on Twitter and Instagram, stuff like that, and this whole idea of, hey, Bruce, let you and I collab, right? I'm not collabing with none of y'all. That's not how this works. If you want to collaborate, right? Because I send this letter as sort of like it's like the normal cover letter when people ask them, let's collab on this thing that I got. I want you, as a collab, to get in this business first. Understand the nuts and bolts of this business, even as an artist, or you've got the greatest idea ever. You may actually have the greatest idea ever, but you're gonna have to get people to believe in your idea. And the way you do that is that you get a spot in this business, you get a job in this business. I don't care what it is. If you could be a production assistant, which will allow you to understand the nuts and bolts of how these things get made, get under the engine and sort of see how these things work. And then you get allies who can believe in your skill sets, your talents and stuff like that, right? So it's gonna take you time to sort of nurture yourself in this business. This is not the music business. It's not like, don't throw me beats. You know what I mean? This is not that business. This business is really talent-based. So the idea of collabing with somebody who's been holding on this nugget since they've been, 15, 16 years old, get a job. It's the first thing I'm gonna say. Get a job. I don't wanna hear your idea. I want you to earn a place where you actually can pitch your idea to somebody like Marlon or Sahadi or Carol. Like, get that, gain allies, and get your talents up, get your skill set up, and then you can actually earn, that opportunity to sit before, folks who can actually help you and believe in your project after that. But no more collab stuff in my Instagram, please. Thank you.
We're going to run out of time pretty soon, but we may have time for one or two audience questions, and if not, we can bring it out into the hallway. But I do want to end this with our master Floyd Norman here.
Yep.
You've had a long, beautiful career, Floyd, inside the studio system. You've been able to manage work outside in your own personal work.
Yeah, I'm a survivor.
You are a survivor in a beautiful way. Any advice for these folks? What's your secret? What keeps you motivated and continuing to do what you do?
When I was at Disney in the turbulent 50s, it was a bad time for animation. And I remember after we completed Sleeping Beauty, literally hundreds of artists lost their jobs. Hundreds of artists got laid off. After we finished 101 Dalmatians in the early 60s, a few more hundred artists got laid off. So this was a tough business. It was tough to stay employed. But the one lesson I learned was that you got to keep yourself employable. And that meant you had to be good at what you did. You had to be so good that people would miss you when you weren't there. And so I've always kept that lesson close to me, that, know my job, work well with people, be nice to have around, and maybe, just maybe, I could stay employed. And I've been quite fortunate to have worked through dozens of Disney films, a couple of Pixar films, whole bunch of TV commercials and short cartoons. I've done a lot of work in my career, but a lot of it is not because I'm such a stellar talent. I'm so-so, but I found that if I worked well with others, if I was a person who was willing to collaborate and give, and I could keep my job. And I managed to work low these many years. I managed to stay employed. And I tell young people, I said, learn all you can, because you may have to reinvent yourself at any time. And I've had to do that any number of times. And I think I've done every job in animation from ink and paint. I've inked and painted cells. I've animated, done layout, painted backgrounds, storyboards. I've written scripts, produced, direct, whatever. I'm open to any job, anything that will keep me employed. And if you want to stay employed as well, then you would do those same things. Never stop learning. Never stop growing, and be willing to continually reinvent yourself, because you may have to. You just never know. You never know what's down the road. Like I said, I've managed to survive through some really tough times where I saw hundreds of my colleagues get booted out of the Disney studio. A lot of people lost their jobs, but I managed to stay employed through every Disney management. And I've known all the top managers at Disney, from Walt Mulroy to Ron Miller to Card Walker to Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, Bob Iger, Bob Chapek. Known them all. Spoke with these dudes face to face. And this is how you keep your job. This is how you stay employed, not just by being a great artist, but working well with others and letting people know you, get to know you, and get to like you. And I guarantee you'll have a career as well. Do that.
Thank you, Floyd. Thank you.
Floyd.
Yeah. We'll do one. We'll try and take one or two quick questions from the audience.
This question is for Floyd. Speaking of time, the first question was how things have changed from start to way back when till now. 1957, you started. You're the first black animator with Walt Disney, last person, or one of the few last people in the world today that actually worked with him. And it wasn't until 1960 that the first black child got into a white school, so to speak. So you were kind of ahead of the time, or Walt Disney was kind of ahead of the times. How was it working with him? I feel like he treated you just like an artist. It didn't matter about anything else because it was about the work, which is what Carol was saying too.
Yeah, that's very true. The Walt Disney Studio and Walt Disney himself was very conservative. He was a very conservative guy. Having said that, don't learn the wrong lesson from that. Walt was surprisingly progressive. He gave opportunities to minorities. He gave opportunities to women. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of women were given opportunity by Walt Disney. Phyllis Harrell, who was my boss when I was doing Disney TV commercials, was a woman who headed up Walt's commercial film division. So, Walt Disney could surprise you. Very conservative dude, but also very progressive.
My name is Justin. I'm from Maryland. And this is a question for pretty much all you guys. So pretty much you guys all went through a lot of turmoil and adversity in your times. Do you think we've sort of got the best time to want to get into animation?
Anyone who has an answer?
This is a great time to get into animation just because of all the studios that are doing it now. Back in the day, it was just Disney and just some random studios that were kind of out and about.
Warner Brothers, Walter Lantz, that was about it.
Yeah, so it was very thin in terms of the field. So the job offerings were very thin. But now you've got every place that all around the world that are doing films now. You can work here in Los Angeles, but be working for a studio in Paris. So the opportunities are vast. So yeah, this is a really good time.
Hi, I have a question, and it's about the environment of films. So I notice when a lot of minority films come out and they perform not very well, they'll blame it on the fact that it's either an all-woman cast or it's a minority-led film. But when other films fail, they'll try to relaunch Batman or Spider-Man or The Terminator 1,000 times. Do you see that changing?
I'll jump on this because you touched on it a little while ago. I think projects with black projects with people of color, they're all seen as very, very just like the other thing. I just finished up Awaju, and at least based on the trailer, it stopped once the show dropped, thankfully. The people were comparing it to Wakanda. And I'm like, well, no one thinks of Star Wars as janky Star Trek, and no one talks about Dune like dusty Star Wars. You gotta have all these different styles of science fiction, but when it's a black or brown thing, it's just like that other one black or brown thing that you saw before.
I would love to see janky Star Wars, by the way. That's funny.
Janky Star Trek.
Janky Star Trek?
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Right, but no one says that about Star Wars. But and so the good news is, as you get more flavors of things, as you get more black product, then you stop, and brown product, you stop comparing things so just like the other thing. So hopefully, all folks up here on this stage, folks out here sitting in these chairs, will be making products that add to the diverse images that are out there in the world. Your short, Waju, the Proud Family, all these things help kind of mix it up because, yeah, we so many times you hear, well, that's just like such and such, when it's nothing like that. Only thing it's similar to it is it stars somebody darker than a paper bag.
Yeah. I also have to add to that, like, when you think about the trends right now in the business, like, for example, George Floyd, suddenly everyone cares about black people and black stories. We see so many black stories, so many resources for black people, for all industries, not just animation or entertainment. And then you see the actor strikes happen, and you see the first shows or stories or contacts that get X'd out were black shows. If you look at Issa Rae, all of her shows, all black, gone, you know? So, like, you could tell that, like, you know, whenever something happens to us, like a tragic event, there's a sense of, like, white saviorness, like, let's help them, let's do something. But the moment shit goes down, the first people who get at.
Ooh, you saying the quiet part out loud. Ooh. But that's good. Go ahead, sister.
No, it's
You
true.
right.
I think it's really important to see those trends and ups and downs. But, like, that was the first thing I noticed last year during the strikes. Like, who got axed, who was not taken care of, and it was all the black shows.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah.
That speaks to my question. It's regarding camaraderie behind the scenes. Like, for example, he brought up the Good Times animation. Do you guys talk to each other behind the scenes as far as, like, you know what, that's not a good look, maybe you should maybe do this? Or is there a certain type of camaraderie with the African American community in animation?
Yeah.
It's called
There-
AfroAnimation. But
There you go.
There you go.
It's all here. Yeah, I mean, I agree. There is camaraderie. We all root for each other's projects, regardless of what the outside world says. We all root for each other. So yeah, there's camaraderie on that level for sure. Now, do we give creative advice? We could if they ask. You know what I mean? But you know, everybody's got their own vision for certain things. We're not some monolithic society. So everybody has a vision of blackness, right? And I'll grant any vision of blackness. I will especially grant someone's vision of blackness that includes us in outer space. For whatever reason, they don't like us in outer space. I don't know why. There's something about the future and black folks in outer space. It's not a combination that is interesting to anybody yet. I don't know, but yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to end it here. So on behalf of Asifa Hollywood and AfroAnimation, thank you so much, panel. What a wonderful event.
I'm gonna need y'all to get up off your seats. Everybody up. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, you guys. Day 3, AfroAnimation is a wrap. We thank you. We have a pool party at 4 p.m., so come through the Marriott. There's a pool. Come hang out with us at 4 o'clock. We do have to vacate this room, but hang out for a second. We're about to announce the winners of the Short Film Festival, so in about 5 minutes, and then we are out. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So. Oh, and we do have a lost wallet. Is Jordan Costa. Is he here? Does anybody know Jordan? He's a student. Okay, we'll try to find him outside. All right. Amazing. Amazing. All right, get your pictures in now. You did. You absolutely did. You can, but why don't you learn some other jobs as well? But thank you so much. We so appreciate it.